The sound was the first thing I registered, a sickening crack as the back of my skull connected with the ceramic tile. A white, blinding flash of pain exploded behind my eyes, radiating down my neck and into my shoulders. I slumped, my knees buckling. Against the kitchen wall, I had painted a soft butter yellow 3 decades ago. My son, Michael, didn't even flinch. His face, the face I had once cradled in my hands, was a mask of crimson rage, his eyes narrowed to slits. He just stared at me, his chest heaving, as I slid down the wall to the linoleum floor. I am 67 years old, and my only child had just assaulted me. From the hallway, I heard a sharp gasp, then a terrified scream. "Grandma! Sophia, my granddaughter." She was 8 years old and was frozen in the doorway, her small hands covering her mouth, her eyes wide with a terror that no child should ever feel, especially not for her own father. The sound of her cry seemed to snap Michael out of his rage, but not into remorse. He simply grunted, an ugly, dismissive sound, turned his back on me, and strode out the sliding glass door to the backyard. I refused to cry. I would not give him the satisfaction. I tasted the metallic tang of blood in my mouth where I'd bitten my tongue. Slowly, painstakingly, I used the edge of the counter to pull myself up. Every bone in my body ached, but it was the hollow, cold cavern that had just opened in my chest that hurt the most. This was my home. I had built this house. I had birthed the man who just threw me against its walls. Through the glass, I watched him join his wife. Amanda was in the backyard, humming as she directed a man setting up a large barbecue grill. She was already hanging colorful party streamers from the gutters of my house. My house. She looked up as Michael approached, and she smiled, a bright, venomous smile. She didn't ask what the crash was. She didn't ask why her daughter was screaming. She simply handed Michael a can of beer from a cooler already packed with ice. He finally left, I heard her say, her voice carrying on the breeze. "Now we can finally live. We are going to have the party of a lifetime." A party. They were celebrating that they had finally broken me, celebrating that they were pushing me out. That would come later, much later. First, I had to get out of there. First, I had to survive this morning. I bypassed the living room, ignoring the new, gaudy sectional sofa they had bought on my credit, and went straight to my room. It wasn't my real room, of course. My master bedroom, the one with the bay window overlooking the rose bushes Arthur and I had planted, was now theirs. They needed the space, Amanda had said. They needed the private bathroom. I had been relegated to the small back room, barely larger than a closet, next to the rattling water heater. I had agreed. I always agreed. I always made myself smaller so they could be more comfortable in my home. I pulled a worn canvas duffel bag from the bottom of the cramped closet. It was the same bag I had carried when I first moved to Austin 45 years ago, filled with dreams of opening my own bakery. Now, it would carry the remnants of the life I was fleeing. I packed sparsely, a few changes of clothes, my blood pressure medication, the thick wool sweater Arthur had given me the Christmas before he died. I tucked in the framed photo of him that sat on my nightstand. His kind eyes and gentle smile seemed to steady my shaking hands. He had been gone for 20 years, a sudden, massive heart attack that took him while he was building a cabinet in his workshop. Some days, I thought he was the lucky one. He never had to see what our son became. My fingers brushed against a worn manila envelope at the bottom of my drawer. I paused. The house deeds. The original documents, crisp and official, bearing my name, Eleanor Vance, as the sole owner, not Michael Vance, not Amanda, mine. A cold, sharp clarity cut through the fog of my pain. I hadn't just been assaulted, I was being robbed. I shoved the envelope deep into the duffel bag, hiding it between the layers of my clothes. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that I was going to need them. The door creaked open. Sophia stood there, her face tear-streaked and pale. She didn't say anything. She just ran to me, wrapping her skinny arms around my waist and burying her face in my blouse. She was trembling. "Grandma, don't go," she whispered, her voice broken. "Please don't leave me." I stroked her fine hair, my heart fracturing all over again. I will never forgive Michael for this. Not for the shove, not for the house, but for this. For putting this fear in his own daughter's heart. I'm just going away for a little while, sweetie. I lied. I'll be back soon, I promise. She shook her head against my stomach. You're lying. Children always know. From the kitchen, I heard Amanda's voice, now loud and carefree. She was on the phone. Yes, she's finally packing. We're doing the barbecue this Saturday to celebrate. Invite everyone. We're finally free. My fingers froze on the zipper. A party to celebrate my departure, to celebrate forcing a 67-year-old woman out of her own home. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. I zipped the bag with a sharp, final pull. I knelt, wincing as my back screamed in protest, and held Sophia's face in my hands. Don't cry, my love. Everything is going to be all right. You'll see. I don't want you to go, she sobbed, clinging to me. I have to, baby. I kissed her forehead. I couldn't stay. Not after this. Not after he had put his hands on me. Not after hearing that woman's laughter. I slung the bag over my shoulder. It felt heavier than it should. I walked through the living room, my eyes tracing the lines of the furniture I no longer recognized. They had painted the walls a sterile gray, covering the warm ivory I had chosen. They had replaced the hardwood floors Arthur and I installed with a cheap, dark laminate. Nothing was mine anymore. I was a ghost in my own life. Amanda was in the backyard, now arranging bags of chips on a folding table. She saw me walking past the glass door. She didn't wave, she just smiled. A small, tight, victorious smile. Her eyes said everything. Finally. You're gone. This is ours. Michael was sitting in a plastic chair, his back to me, nursing his beer. He didn't look up. He didn't say goodbye. I opened the front door. The bright Texas sun hit me, making me squint. It was hot, a dry, suffocating heat that burned my throat. I walked down the stone path I had laid with my own hands. I didn't look back. I couldn't. My legs were shaking, and I had no idea where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay there one more second. I crossed the street, my steps unsteady. My neighbor, Clara, was watering her azaleas. She was my age, a kind woman who had lived across from me for 30 years. She saw me, saw the duffel bag, and her expression changed from placid neutrality to sharp concern. Eleanor? What's happened? I shook my head. I couldn't speak. If I opened my mouth, the dam would break and I would fall apart right there on the sidewalk. She dropped the hose, water pooling around her feet, and rushed to me. Come, she said, her voice firm but gentle. Come inside. She took my arm, and her grip was strong. She led me into her quiet, cool house. It smelled like lemon polish and old books. She sat me down at her kitchen table and made me a cup of an herbal tea that smelled like chamomile. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely hold the mug. Clara didn't ask questions. She just sat with me, her gaze filled with a profound, unspoken understanding. Women of our generation, we didn't always need words. We recognized the language of pain. I drank the tea in silence. My body felt heavy, weighted down by more than just years. I felt old, not old in body, but old in soul. Worn down by the weariness of betrayal, by the abandonment of the one person I loved most in the world. I had raised that boy. After Arthur died, it was just me and Michael. I had kept the bakery running, working from before sunrise until after sunset, just so he would want for nothing. I paid for his college, every single penny, so he wouldn't have to work with his hands like his father and I did. I had supported him when he met Amanda, even when a small voice inside me screamed that she was all sharp edges and selfish ambition. But he loved her, and I just wanted him to be happy. So, I had silenced that voice. I had always silenced myself. When they asked to move in, just for a few months, because they were saving for a down payment, I had said yes. Of course I said yes. He was my son. This was his home. It will only be for 6 months, Mom, Michael had promised. Just until we get on our feet. 6 months turned into a year, then 2. Sophia was born, and they never left. The takeover was slow. It was insidious. It started with small things. Amanda reorganized my kitchen, the one I had designed for the bakery, complaining that my layout was inefficient. She moved my professional-grade mixer into the garage to make space for her espresso machine. Then she started commenting on the furniture. "It's so dated, Eleanor." My beautiful, solid oak table, the one Arthur had built, was too heavy. One day, I came home from the market to find they had moved my entire bedroom into the small back room. "We just need the space, Mom," Michael had said, avoiding my eyes. "With Sophia growing, we need the master suite." You understand. I understood. I was being erased. Clara prepared her guest room for me. It was immaculate, with a floral quilt and a scent of lavender. "Rest, Eleanor," she said softly. "We'll talk tomorrow. You can stay as long as you need." I thanked her with a nod, my voice still trapped in my throat. I lay down on the strange, comfortable bed and closed my eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. All I could hear was Amanda's laughter, bright and sharp, floating over the fence. "We're going to celebrate. We're finally free." I spent the whole night staring at the ceiling, my mind a relentless projector, replaying the story of how I had lost my son, or perhaps I had never truly had him. Maybe I had been too blind, too willing to see only the sweet boy I had raised, not the man he had become. Maybe he had always been this person, and my love had been a curtain I'd refused to look behind. I remembered the day we bought this lot, Arthur and I. It was just a patch of dusty land outside Austin. We had saved for a decade. He was a carpenter, and I was just starting my bakery, Eleanor's Goods. We sketched the plans for the house on a napkin at a diner. We built it with our own hands, every weekend for 2 years. Arthur framed the walls, and I nailed the shingles, my hands raw and blistered. Michael, then just a boy, would play in the dirt with his toy trucks, a small shadow in the skeleton of our future. When we finally moved in, Arthur carried me over the threshold, laughing. "We did it, Elle," he'd said, his voice thick with pride. "We have a home." We had a home. For years, we were happy there. The house smelled of fresh bread and sawdust. Michael was a quiet boy, always reading. He was smart. Arthur was so proud. "My son is going to college," he would boast to his friends. "He's not going to break his back with a hammer like me." We poured everything into him. Our savings, our hopes, our dreams. When Arthur died, Michael was 21, in his last year of college. I found him in his workshop, slumped over the rocking chair he had been building for our future grandchildren. His heart had just stopped. My world ended, but I had Michael. I told him not to worry, that I would handle everything, that he just had to finish his studies. I sold the bakery's delivery van. I took out a second mortgage on our house to pay his tuition. I worked 16-hour days, my hands covered in flour and dough, my heart an empty ache. But I did it. He graduated. I was there, sitting alone in the crowd, bursting with pride. My son, the college graduate, we did it. He got a job at a logistics firm. He met Amanda there. She was ambitious, he said, driven. He brought her home for Sunday dinner. She was pretty, dressed in sharp, expensive clothes that seemed out of place in my simple home. She talked about her 5-year plan, about promotions, about the kind of house she wanted, the car she wanted to drive. It was all, "I want, I will have." Not we. I felt a twist in my stomach, but I smiled. He loved her. They married. I paid for most of the wedding. When Sophia was born, my heart melted. A granddaughter, my blood. But the visits became less frequent. They were struggling. The rent was high. The baby was expensive. Then came the request. "Just for a few months, Mom." The first few days had been wonderful. It was nice to have noise in the house again, Sophia's gurgling laughter, Michael coming home from work. But Amanda chafed at my presence. First, it was the living room. We need space for Sophia's playpen. My favorite armchair, the one Arthur had built for me, was shoved into a corner. Then, the kitchen. "What you have is so old, Eleanor. This is better." She bought new appliances on credit, filling the counters. Then my room. We're just so cramped, and you're all alone. It's only fair. Fair. That word had burned. Fair, to be kicked out of my own room. The room I had shared with my husband. The room where the morning sun hit the window just right. I moved to the back room, next to the rattling water heater. I told myself it was temporary. It was never temporary. They stopped talking about leaving. When I asked about their savings, Michael was evasive. It's tough, Mom. We need more time. Amanda started inviting her friends over. Loud parties I wasn't invited to. I would stay in my little room, listening to strangers laughing in my backyard. The bills started piling up. Electricity, water, gas. Amanda left lights on, took multiple baths a day. Michael said he would pay half, but he never did. My savings, the money I had set aside from the bakery sale for my old age, began to dwindle. Then came the car. Amanda needed one. They took out a loan. A few months later, they remodeled the guest bathroom without asking, handing me the bill from the contractor. We're improving your house, Mom. Michael had snapped when I protested. This increases the property's value. You're going to leave it to us anyway, right? Why are you complaining? Those words had been a slap. You're going to leave it to us anyway. As if I were already dead. As if I were just an obstacle. Sophia, my sweet Sophia, started to pull away. Amanda would scold her. Don't bother Grandma. She's busy. The little girl learned not to seek me out, her eyes full of a confusion that broke my heart. The final straw had been building for weeks. I had received a bank statement for a $5,000 loan I had not taken out. My signature was on the paperwork, a clumsy, obvious forgery. When I confronted Michael, he didn't even deny it. We needed it for the roof. It was leaking. You stole my identity, Michael. You forged my signature. Just shut up, he had roared, his face turning purple. I'm sick of your complaints. You think this is still your house? It's not. We run things here. You just live here because we let you. That was 2 weeks ago. I had hidden the deeds after that. I had started making a plan. But I had been too slow, too hopeful. This morning, he had demanded I sign papers to put the house in his name, just in case something happens to you, Mom. It's for your own good. I had refused. And that's when he shoved me. I must have fallen asleep, because I woke to the sun streaming through Clara's guest room window. My body was a constellation of pain. My head, my back, my heart. Clara brought me breakfast. Eat, she insisted. I wasn't hungry, but I ate, not wanting to be a burden here, too. I spent 3 days in that room, floating in a thick fog of shock and grief. I didn't know what to do. I was 67 years old, homeless, with a few $100s in cash and a duffel bag. Clara was a saint. She gave me space, she brought me meals, and she never, ever smothered me with pity. On the 3rd day, everything changed. Clara came in from the backyard, her cell phone in her hand. Her face was tight with an anger I had never seen on her. Eleanor, she said, her voice flat, you have to see this. She showed me the screen. It was a photo of my house, my backyard. It was full of people, tables laden with food, red plastic cups, bottles of beer. The new barbecue grill Michael had been setting up was smoking. There were colored balloons. I could almost hear the music. They were having the party to celebrate my absence. She swiped. Another photo. Michael, beer in hand, arms slung over a friend's shoulder, laughing. Amanda, raising a wine glass, toasting a group of women. My stomach churned. Then Clara played a video. The music was thumping, loud and obnoxious. Amanda was standing on one of my patio chairs, holding her glass high. Her voice, shrill and triumphant, cut through the noise. To freedom, she shrieked. She's finally gone. We are finally rid of her. Now this house is ours. We can do whatever we want. Cheers. I heard the chorus of cheers. I heard the glasses clink. I heard the laughter. The video ended. I stared at the black screen. My hands were no longer shaking. They were perfectly, terrifyingly still. The fog in my head didn't just lift, it evaporated. The pain, the sadness, the grief, it all receded, and something else took its place. A cold, hard, clarifying rage. It was the purest, strongest thing I had felt in 20 years. They were toasting. They were celebrating that they had assaulted an old woman and stolen her home. They thought they had won. They thought I was a weak, old, broken thing they could just throw away. They were wrong. How long has this been going on? My voice was quiet, but it didn't quaver. My niece lives 2 streets over. She said it started around 10 this morning, Clara said, watching me. It's almost 3 now. I stood up. I made a mistake, Clara. What mistake, honey? Running away. I left like I was the one who was guilty. I left like a thief in the night. I walked to the window and looked across the street at my house, at the party that was still in full swing. They are having a party in my home, celebrating that I'm gone. They assaulted me. They forged my signature. They stole my money. And they are celebrating. Eleanor, what are you going to do? I'm going to get my house back. I turned to her. The fear was gone. I'm going to kick them out. But how? They have everything. No, I said. I walked to the duffel bag and pulled out the manila envelope. They don't. I turned to Clara. Do you know a lawyer? A good one. A shark. Clara's worried expression slowly transformed into a grim smile. As a matter of fact, I do. Her name was Elizabeth Diaz. She was sharp, mid-50s, with intelligent eyes that missed nothing. Her office was downtown, small but professional. Clara had called ahead, and Miss Diaz had agreed to see us immediately. An emergency consultation. I told her everything. I didn't cry. I spoke with a cold, clear precision. I told her about the move-in, the slow takeover, the financial drain, the forged loan, and the assault. I showed her the bank statements I had hidden. I showed her the duffel bag I was living out of. And I showed her the deeds, clear, indisputable, in my name only. Clara showed her the video of Amanda's toast. Miss Diaz listened, her fingers steepled. When I finished, she was silent for a full minute. Mrs. Vance, she said finally, this is not a family dispute. This is elder abuse, fraud, and illegal dispossession. You have a very, very strong case. What can we do? We can do a lot. But I need you to understand. This will be difficult. You will be formally accusing your son of a crime. Are you prepared for that? I thought of Michael's face, twisted in rage. I thought of Sophia, screaming in the hallway. I thought of Amanda, raising her glass. Yes, I said. I am. Good. She picked up her phone. They are currently trespassing. They are on your property, without your consent, having a party to celebrate your illegal eviction. The assault is grounds for an immediate emergency removal order. Given the circumstances, I believe I can get a judge to sign it today. This afternoon. Today? My heart hammered. Today. Miss Diaz's smile was thin and sharp. They chose to have a party. Let's not disappoint the guests. For the next 2 hours, Miss Diaz was a whirlwind. She drafted affidavits. She called a judge she knew. She coordinated with the local police precinct. She was magnificent. She told me the police would meet us at the house. We will serve them together, she said. You have every right to be there when you reclaim your home. She also made a call to Child Protective Services, informing them that a minor would be present during a police-assisted eviction. Sophia's safety is a priority, she explained. At 6 o'clock that evening, we drove back to my street. My street. Clara came with me. As we pulled up, I saw them. 2 police cruisers were parked at the curb, their lights off. Miss Diaz was already there, speaking with 2 officers. A third, unmarked car pulled up behind them, and a woman in a professional suit got out. The CPS worker. The music was still playing. The party was winding down, but there were still at least a dozen people in the backyard. I got out of the car, my legs shaking again. But this time, it was with adrenaline, not fear. Mrs. Vance, the lead officer, a tall man named Ramirez, said to me, I need you to confirm. This is your property, and the people inside do not have your permission to be here. I looked at the home I had built. This is my house, and they are trespassing. All right, please stay back with your lawyer. The 2 officers, Miss Diaz and the CPS worker, walked up my stone path. I stood on the sidewalk with Clara. The music was loud, some pop song I didn't recognize. Officer Ramirez pounded on the front door. The music volume dropped. I heard footsteps. The door opened. It was Michael. He was holding a beer, his face flushed with alcohol and sun. He smiled, a sloppy, drunken grin, thinking it was a neighbor complaining about the noise. His smile vanished when he saw the uniforms. "Can I help you? Are you Michael Vance?" "Yeah. What's this about?" Miss Diaz stepped forward, calm and clear. "Mr. Vance, I am Elizabeth Diaz, attorney for Eleonora Vance, the owner of this property. You are being served with an emergency eviction order, signed by Judge Alpert. You and your associates are to vacate the premises immediately." Michael just stared. He blinked, as if he couldn't process the words. "What? That's crazy. This is my house. Mom? What is this?" He saw me then, standing on the sidewalk, his face contorted, the confusion turning to pure, unadulterated fury. "You, what did you do?" Amanda pushed past him. "What is going on? You can't be here. This is our house." "Ma'am," Officer Ramirez said, his voice a wall of calm authority. "This property is legally registered to Eleonora Vance. The order is valid. You have 30 minutes to collect your essential personal belongings. You will be allowed to schedule a time to retrieve the rest of your property in the presence of an officer." "30 minutes!" Amanda shrieked. "That's insane. We live here. This is all a lie. She's a senile old woman." The order is also based on evidence of fraud regarding a $5,000 loan taken out in Mrs. Vance's name and a formal complaint of physical assault, Miss Diaz added, her voice cutting through the air. Amanda's face went white. The guests in the backyard, drawn by the commotion, were now clustered at the glass door, their faces a mixture of shock and morbid curiosity. They saw the police, they saw me. The party was over. People started grabbing their things, muttering apologies, streaming out the side gate. They didn't want to be involved. In 5 minutes, the yard was empty. "You can't do this," Michael yelled, taking a step toward me. "Sir, stay back," Officer Ramirez warned, putting a hand on his belt. Michael froze. The CPS worker stepped inside. "Mr. Vance, where is your daughter?" "She's in her room," Michael mumbled, his drunken anger deflating into a pathetic confusion. The worker went inside. A moment later, Sophia came out, her eyes wide and terrified. She saw me and ran. "Grandma! Grandma!" She flew past the officers and wrapped her arms around my legs, sobbing. "What's happening? Why are the police here?" I knelt, my heart breaking. "It's okay, sweetheart. Everything is going to be okay." The CPS worker, Miss Sanchez, approached gently. She knelt beside me. "Hi, Sophia. My name is Miss Sanchez. I'm here to make sure you're safe. Your mom and dad have to leave this house for a little while, but we're going to make sure you have a safe place to be." Amanda grabbed Sophia's arm and yanked her back. "Don't you talk to her. This is her fault. She's trying to make you homeless." "Ma'am," the officer warned, "do not interfere with the CPS worker." For the next 30 minutes, I watched the life they had built in my home be dismantled. It was ugly. Amanda was crying, throwing clothes into trash bags, screaming about her rights. Michael was silent, defeated, packing a bag with shaking hands. The man who had pushed me against a wall was gone. In his place was just a weak, pathetic boy. They were escorted out. They piled their trash bags into their car, the car I was still paying for. Amanda shot me a look of such profound hatred, it was almost tangible. "This isn't over, you old bitch. You will regret this." "Any threats will be documented," Miss Diaz said sweetly. Michael wouldn't look at me. He just got in the car. Miss Sanchez was speaking with them, explaining that she would be in contact regarding Sophia. Sophia was crying in the back seat, her small hand pressed against the glass. And then they were gone. They drove down the street and turned the corner, gone. I stood on the sidewalk in the sudden, jarring silence. The street was empty, save for Clara, Miss Diaz, and me. The police car pulled away. Miss Diaz and Miss Sanchez gave me their cards, told me to call if I needed anything, and that we would talk in the morning. I was alone with Clara, in front of my house. The front door was still wide open. I could see the mess from the party, the trash, the empty bottles. "Do you want me to stay with you tonight?" Clara asked. I shook my head. "No. I need to do this alone. But thank you, Clara. For everything." She hugged me, tight. "You are the strongest woman I know, Eleanor Vance." She left. I walked up my stone path. I stepped over the threshold. The house was silent. It was a disaster. There was trash everywhere, dirty plates, spilled drinks, but it was my house. I went to the backyard. The party streamers were still hanging, limp and sad. I started cleaning. I methodically gathered the plastic cups, the paper plates, the beer bottles. I tore down the streamers. With every bag of trash I filled, I felt lighter. I was not just cleaning up a party, I was purging my home. I was scrubbing away their presence, their entitlement, their cruelty. I went to the master bedroom, my bedroom. Amanda's clothes were still in the closet, her makeup smeared on the vanity. I got more trash bags. I emptied the drawers, the closet. I piled it all by the front door for them to retrieve. I stripped the bed of her gaudy, leopard print sheets. I went to the linen closet and pulled out my own, the simple, high-quality cotton sheets I'd had for years. I made the bed. I went to the small, dark room where I had been imprisoned. I gathered my few things. I brought the photo of Arthur back to the master bedroom and set it on the nightstand where it belonged. "I'm home, Arthur," I whispered. It was almost midnight when I finished. The house was clean. I went to my armchair, the one they had shoved in the corner. I dragged it back to its rightful place, by the bay window. I sat down. The house was quiet. It was the sound of peace, the sound of freedom, the sound of a life reclaimed. I had lost my son. I had lost years of my life to their selfishness. But sitting there, in the quiet of my own home, I realized I had not been broken. To love someone is not to permit them to destroy you. To be family is not a license for abuse. I had built this house from love and sacrifice, and I had almost lost it to greed. But I had fought back. The next morning, I called a locksmith and had every lock in the house changed. I made coffee in my own kitchen and sat in my armchair, watching the sun rise through my window. I didn't know what would happen with Michael or with Amanda. I knew there would be court dates, legal battles, and lingering pain. I knew the fight for Sophia would be long and difficult. But I knew, with absolute certainty, that I would never again make myself small to accommodate someone else's cruelty. My home was my sanctuary, not a sacrifice. And I was, finally, its rightful owner.